A top AEW star re-signs with the company. Bryan Danielson, Jon Moxley, and William Regal revealed the name for their stable last night on Dynamite. Chris Jericho makes more WWE references. We have an update for next week's Dynamite on TBS, plus a title match announced for Rampage on Friday. All this and more in today's AEW news. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestle News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there are plenty of news stories to get into in the world of AEW. So let's start off talking about a new re-signing or a contract extension for one Ethan Page, because Ethan Page reportedly has signed a new contract with All Elite Wrestling. Ethan Page has reportedly signed a new contract with AEW. A new report from Fightful Select notes that Page has signed a contract extension with the company. He previously signed with AEW in early 2021, about a year ago. He made his debut, of course, at Revolution in 2021, and a deal to extend that contract was actually reached later on in the year. Now, there's no word on the terms of Page's contract extension, but of course, the deal will keep him with AEW for multiple years to come. Now, Page is currently aligned with AEW TNT champion Scorpio Sky as the Men of the Year, and they are being managed by Dan Lambert along with Paige Van Zant. Now, Page last wrestled on the March 4 edition of AEW Rampage, but came up short to Christian Cage. His last single match before that was the loss to Jon Moxley on the January 21 edition of AEW Rampage, and before that he took a loss to then TNT champion Cody Rhodes. Remember him on the New Year's edition of AEW Rampage. Page has appeared on Dynamite with Sky and Lambert, but he has not wrestled on AEW's flagship show since the loss to then TNT champion Sammy Guevara all the way back on October 27. Now, Page recently moved from Canada to the United States and continues to find YouTube success with his vlog, which you can see on this very platform. So, good re-signing, obviously, for AEW. I mean, Ethan Page, I've covered him so much when we were talking about him in Impact Wrestling. I'm a big fan of his work. I think that he's improved immensely over the course of the last 3 years or so. I mean, the Ethan Page you see right there and the Ethan Page that you see, frankly, in AEW is dramatically different to the Ethan Page that you might have seen in Impact Wrestling just a few years ago. I mean, physically, he's transformed. In the ring, I think he's improved too. You know, I had high hopes for him coming into AEW. Has he matched those high hopes? It's really difficult to say, I think. It's very difficult to say because, obviously, I think going from Impact to AEW, it's just vastly different. I think that... And I might be wrong with this. I really don't know. I'm kind of guessing here. So if I'm wrong, then feel free to let me know in the comment section below. But I get the impression that when Ethan Page's contract expired with Impact, that was in December of 2020, there was a feeling, I think, that once Josh Alexander's contract expired with Impact, which was in February of 2022, this year, I think that there was a feeling of, you know, he'll join Ethan Page in the North. And I think in AEW as the North, once again, I think the feeling was, let's sign Ethan Page now. We can have him doing something, whether it's wrestle as a singles. I'm not massively keen on him being in another tag team. I'd rather he wasn't. I'd rather him be wrestling singles matches, to be honest with you. But I think the kind of hope maybe from AEW's perspective was that, okay, we want this tag team. The North are a great tag team, one of the best tag teams in Impact Wrestling history, longest reigning Impact Wrestling tag team champions in company history, two-time Impact World Tag Team champions. I think the hope was, let's sign Ethan Page now. And then in about 18 months' time, Josh Alexander, his contract will come up. We'll sign him. The North are back together. We love tag team wrestling in AEW. We've got the strongest tag team division in the world. I mean, the depth of tag team they have there is incredible, frankly, whether it's Jurassic Express, FTR, the Lucha Brothers, the Hardy Boys, the Young Bucks. I mean, we could go on and on and on and on. You know, Moxley and Danielson now, that list of tag teams is just amazing. And the North would have fit in there, absolutely. Red Dragon, how can I forget about them? So there's so many. And I think AEW was kind of looking a bit long-term when it came to the signing of Ethan Page. But of course, that's changed now because Josh Alexander's very committed. He's staying with Impact Wrestling, right? He's not going anywhere. He just re-signed a new contract. He's going to be a main event talent for that company. He's going to win the Impact World Championship very soon, I think, probably at Rebellion. And it kind of leaves Ethan Page in a position of, what do I do now? Again, I wasn't huge, to be honest with you, on him being in another tag team with Scorpio Sky for two reasons. One, because I think if Ethan Page is in a tag team, it should be the North. On the other side of that, I don't think Scorpio Sky should have been another tag team coming out of SCU. Now he's the TNT champion, and he's going to be focusing on singles matches. Logic would suggest that Ethan Page has got to be doing the same, but as I just mentioned, he's not wrestled a match on Dynamite since October, and that's kind of the issue, I suppose, with Dynamite right now is, and just AEW in general, is that roster is so loaded. I mean, absolutely so loaded that, you know, if you're not in planned, you're kind of stuck. And I think Ethan Page, to be honest with you, is a name that could really benefit from a bit of Ring of Honor. I really do. Now that Tony Khan has got both companies, Ethan Page, I think, is a great example of someone that's too good to be sitting on the sidelines, not really doing anything. And I think that's where you could go, you know what? Go to Ring of Honor. Go to Ring of Honor for 6 months. Become the ROH television champion or the ROH world champion. He could absolutely do that. And it'd just be another string to his bow. I think it's smart to extend the contract. Again, I now wonder what his future looks like, knowing that we're not going to get the North for a really long time, because Alexander would have signed for, I would assume, a minimum of 2 years. So we're definitely not going to get the North anytime soon. And frankly, I'm not even sure that Josh Alexander should be in a tag team at the moment, because he's doing such great work as a singles. So Ethan Page's future is very curious, in my opinion. So we'll see what happens with him. I mentioned that we have a stable name for Jon Moxley, William Regal, and Bryan Danielson during last night's episode of Dynamite on TBS, which was a bit of a strange episode, to be honest with you. Some noteworthy stuff, I guess. The main event, I wasn't too... The whole Jericho... We'll talk about the Jericho thing in a second. I think, to be honest with you, the opener was great. Punk versus Dax was fantastic. But for me, the Moxley, Danielson, Regal stuff continues to be the best stuff on the show, in my opinion. And during last night's Dynamite, the team of Moxley, Danielson, of course, with William Regal accompanying them, he was on commentary once again, picked up another victory. This time they defeated the Varsity Blondes, Brian Pillman Jr. and Griff Garrison, with Julia Hart not really caring at all at ringside. She still got the eye patch. I'm surprised they haven't paid that off yet, because I assumed the whole idea was black mist in the face. Eventually, she pulls the eye patch off and she's got the Malachi Black eye and she's in the House of Black. But they haven't really continued that. That's just kind of there at the moment, which is a bit odd. Nevertheless, once the match was over, and fired up Jon Moxley, grabbed the microphone and went into a speech about how William Regal's words, there's a lot of W's there, William Regal's words are of great importance to him. He says that people can claim what they want to be a part of the developing stable, but until they show they're sadistic, like Mox, Bryan, and Regal, they won't make it. He then continued on, saying that he wears the Blackpool Badge of Honor, just like the American Dragon. Moxley says they were forged in combat, and if anyone wants to get in the ring with them, they best step up or get stepped on. Jon then explained that if anyone thinks they can ride with the three most sadistic individuals, they're not giving out free passes. Talent needs to reach deep down and find a place where they love pain. Lastly, Moxley revealed that the group's name going forward will be the Blackpool Combat Club. Now, I have seen, shall we say, a mixed response to this name. I don't think it needs club, to be honest. I like the idea of it just being Blackpool Combat. I think that sounds maybe a bit better. It's very pro wrestling. The thing is, sometimes I suppose with names, and this is going to sound quite hypocritical because we're all, you know, poo-pooing on Butch, but names, a lot of names initially don't sound great, and maybe it is a name that will grow, but my initial reaction was, I don't know. I do think the faction needs a name. They need to be something. I like the idea of Blackpool Combat. Like I said, I don't think everything needs to be a club, whether it's Gun Club, Bullet Club. You know, I don't think it needs it. I like the idea of Blackpool Combat or something like that. Well, that sounds like a great pay-per-view name as well, if they were ever going to do a show in Blackpool, I think. So, yeah, I'm not sure about that name. You can let me know what you think in the comment section below. Initially, I was like, okay. But I'm not sure the club is necessary in that one. Chris Jericho, as I mentioned, the Jericho Appreciation Society had their in-ring debut in the main event as Chris Jericho and Daniel Garcia had a match against John Silver and Alex Reynolds of the Dark Order. And Chris Jericho continued with his WWE references on this week's Dynamite. Of course, last week he spoke about being a sports entertainer and not a pro wrestler. He said that he was going to future endeavor John Silver and Alex Reynolds of the Dark Order, just like they did with Santana and Ortiz. And of course, as I mentioned, they defeated them in the main event. As I said before, I'm not wild on the Jericho Appreciation Society name. I just really don't think it works. I'm not big on, and that's entertainment. I don't really think that works as well. And this is the problem. When you talk about stuff like this, people will go, well, that's the point. You're not supposed to like it. It's supposed to get heat. And it's like, I don't think it's I don't think that's the same. I don't think it's a case of, you know, oh, it's getting heat if you don't like it. No, it just doesn't really sound right. And you have to be clever, I think. And Jericho knows this as well, that with catchphrases, and Lord knows, Jericho's had so many catchphrases in his career, and you have to be smart, I guess, with it, in that you do have to say it every week, and you do have to hammer it home, but sometimes it becomes very obvious that Jericho's trying really hard to get a catchphrase over, and he just can't seem to find a hit. GFY, and that's entertainment. It's too forced, you know, and it feels like when he says it, oh, he's trying to get a catchphrase over, that kind of situation, and it doesn't feel organic, you know, and I think that's the issue, in my opinion. I think that's the problem. The Jericho Appreciation Society is a stable. I'm fine with it. Ideally, I wouldn't be going, you know, stable to stable. It still does feel somewhat Inner Circle 2.0. That kind of felt like the point of the Inner Circle before. I like the idea of elevating Daniel Garcia and 2.0. It just, at the moment, feels very forced, and I think that's the issue. And I'm not against the idea of using these WWE references to get heat. Again, Cactus Jack did that in ECW in the mid-90s, and it was great. I just think there's tweaking that needs to be involved if this is to work. But Jericho's taken a big swing, and I think you have to give him credit for that too. I really do. Speaking of Dynamite, next week we have some matches announced for next week's edition of AEW Dynamite. FTR is going to be facing the Gun Club. As I mentioned, Dax Harwood faced CM Punk in the opening match of Dynamite last night, and the Gun Club were in the crowd. I don't really know why, but they kind of were in the crowd. Maybe I'm forgetting something. FTR seemingly have turned babyface, or are turning babyface. You know, we had a segment with MJF, sort of, you know, Wardlow came out and he restrained Wardlow, says, I'm not going to let you out of your contract, I'm going to essentially starve you, I'm going to pay you to sit at home, and all that kind of stuff. They said, you know, Sean Spears did the whole, if the Pinnacle, you're always on top situation, but I mean, to me, the Pinnacle doesn't seem like a thing anymore. I mean, it was kind of a faction of convenience, really, just so they could feud with the Inner Circle whilst MJF was feuding with Chris Jericho, and they could do blood and guts and all that kind of stuff. That's what I felt, certainly. So I don't think the Pinnacle are together. I mentioned before, that as soon as I saw CM Punk versus Dax Harwood, one, I was interested because I thought that's going to be a great match, and it was. But I thought, there are three guys there that are huge Bret Hart fans. I mean, CM Punk was getting emotional in the post-Revolution media scrum talking about Bret Hart, and we know how much FTR are huge fans and friends of Bret Hart, and I said, we know they fired Tully, and if AEW loves a faction, it's the New Japan kind of philosophy when it comes to groups and factions. Who's to say we don't have a faction that's CM Punk, FTR, and Bret Hart as the wise sage, the manager, and who knows, that could lead to some kind of blood and guts match with this Bret Hart faction versus a William Regal faction, Moxley, Danielson, and whoever they add. That's interesting. Wheeler Yuta involved in that. That could be very, very interesting. So I'd keep an eye out for that one. FTR are in the middle of something. There's something going on there. And also Darby Allin's going to be facing Andrade El Idolo. They had an 8-man tornado tag match last night on Dynamite, which was a lot of fun. It was the opening half hour, 30 minutes of Dynamite was great. It was the Punk match and also the 8-man tag. Yes, the finish was botched by Sting. They hoped to go for Gin and Juice, Private Party, and the idea was that Sting would drop down, Scorpion Death Drop, I think, to Mark Quinn. Didn't happen. He dropped down and Sting lost his balance. I was worried for a second that he lost his balance because just seconds before, he did a Stinger splash in the corner and his head whiplashed off that top turnbuckle, and I cringe every time because this is still Sting in his 60s with neck issues, and I thought and I still do panic. I just think, oh, there's going to be this time where his legs go again or something like that happens, and I thought that was happening, and it wasn't. It was just a case of a botch, and if anyone deserves a pass, it's Sting. The guy is 63 years old, and he did a dive off the top rope. He dived off the balcony at Revolution. Jeff Hardy was Jeff Hardy in the match as well. Got this ginormous ladder and dived off part of the arena through 2 tables. The fall was broken by cardboard boxes, but I thought it was a really fun match. It was a lot of fun, and I still think we're building to Sting and Darby versus the Hardys, and that's going to be awesome whenever they decide to do that. Rampage, of course, is on Friday. It was taped last night. We're not going to get into the spoilers, but a couple of matches have been announced for the show. One being the FTW Championship match. Ricky Starks is going to be defending against Swerve Strickland, so Swerve is continuing on Rampage as this story with Team Taz, and I'm sure Keith Lee will get involved and all that kind of stuff. Again, I don't know the spoilers because I don't really look at the spoilers for Rampage, so I don't know if we'll have a title change there. Lance Archer versus Dustin Rhodes also been announced. They were in Texas last night, and Dustin Rhodes said, in my hometown of Austin, we're going to face off. It's a pretty good promo by Dustin, actually, too. Hook is going to receive a certificate of accomplishment from QT Marshall, so they're continuing that, even though Hook defeated QT at Revolution. I think it's just a case of Hook's going to continue to beat people, plus he's still very green, so you want him in there with people that he knows and he's experienced with, that being QT Marshall, considering he's trained him, so that's probably why. Nyla Rose is going to be in action. There was a horrible segment on Dynamite with Thunder Rosa and Nyla Rose. That it was going to be Thunder Rosa's first interview since winning the Women's Championship, and Vicky Guerrero came out just after Thunder Rose. Maybe Thunder Rosa said maybe one word, and it was just bad. Nyla Rose came out and attacked Thunder Rosa, and it certainly was not the segment for the person who main evented a brutal steel cage match and won the AEW Women's World Championship last week. I just didn't think that worked at all. And also the Dark Order, Alan Angels and Preston Vance will be facing Red Dragon. One would assume that Red Dragon will win that one as well. Finally, Tony Khan has spoken about the AEW pay-per-views, talking about how they're doing similar buy rates to 2013 WWE. This is what he said on the SiriusXM's Busted Open radio show. He said, quote, I don't know if people know how significant the buys we've done for these shows are, but you look back, for example, at the competition, and before they stopped doing pay-per-views in 2013, at a time when it was arguably easier to get people to order a pay-per-view or sit down and devote that time, but if it's apples to apples comparison, 9 years ago at similar price points we're doing very similar sales. For example, just looking at before the WWE Network came in and of the competition doing pay-per-view, you know, just look back at the pay-per-view numbers in 2013. They are very similar to the numbers we've done for our last few pay-per-views. And before that, really outside of WWE, nobody has done the pay-per-view numbers that we're doing since the 90s. It's a pretty good time for pro wrestling. Look, I mentioned this before, that AEW's pay-per-view numbers actually have been really good, especially in comparison to what they were doing just before the pandemic. You look at Revolution 2020, did like 90,000. Last year for All Out, they did 205,000 buys. That's very significant. It very much is. Now, he says that it's arguably, you know, was easier to get people to convince them to sit down and watch pay-per-view back then. That's fair. But there's also many more channels to watch pay-per-view now. Back then, it was still, as far as I'm aware, still really just by your cable or your network provider in the United States. Now it's, you know, yes, it's those traditional methods are still there, but it's still BR Live, there's Fight TV, there's streaming. It's arguably maybe easier to order those pay-per-views because the pay-per-view business was dying. In terms of apples-to-apples comparison, it kind of is and it kind of isn't, because we're talking about records that are a decade ago, and I get the point he's trying to make. He's that pay-per-view was dying then, so let alone 10 years later, we're still doing the same numbers. That's pretty impressive, and it is. But also, you could also say that WWE was doing those pay-per-view numbers and they were going month to month to month to month. AEW has 4 pay-per-views a year. It's once a quarter, so the anticipation is much higher. If they could do the numbers that they're doing month to month to month to month, then that would be impressive. But WWE was operating at a different business model at the time. They were still doing, and they still do, month-to-month events. And that's a little bit different, in my opinion. So it's not totally apples-to-apples comparison. That's just my 2 cents on it, though. Anyway, guys, let me know your thoughts on the AEW news story today in the comment section below. Be sure to like and subscribe to Wrestle News 365, and I'll speak for you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.